back to the online study of preparing for PPA certification. We're now on the final section of the lighting section, which is section H. And section H says, use lighting techniques as composition and design elements. Now there's one item from this section on the exam. We'll begin with taking a look at number 1. It says, knowledge of how to coordinate composition and lighting to create the desired effect. So it's interesting that we're going to talk about that here, because in the very next section we're going to spend a lot of time talking about composition and design, but in this case we're really looking at how we utilize lighting in the design of our composition. So let's get to work. Let's begin with the idea that the eye tends to go to the brightest part of a dark image or the darkest part of a light image. Your eye goes to the area of greatest contrast. So if the overall values of an image are darker and deeper tonal values, if there's something bright or colorful within that scene, that's where the eye is going to tend to go. The opposite is true if you have a scene that's generally light values and white colors and lighter tones. If there's something really dark in that scene, then your eye is going to tend to go to that. So we're going to use that to our advantage here as we incorporate lighting into our compositions by simply saying, if you want to draw some attention to something in the scene, light it. If you don't want attention on something, then don't light it. So let's take a look at a couple of examples here. In this image, I used strong backlighting on the fountain to create a dramatic image of this couple. It works in the composition because it's generally a bright background, and your eye definitely goes to the darkest part of the scene, leading you directly to the couple. Now I use this technique quite a bit, using silhouettes and partial silhouettes. In this image of the dancer, the backlit fountains gave me a wonderful design of the dancer in her pose, and we still see detail in the dancer so that we can recognize who it is. In this image, I used lighting as part of the design to let the light skim just across the subject's face and her tummy for this beautiful maternity photograph. I used a softbox with a grid to narrow the spread of light, which gave me a great deal more control over where the light spread on the subject. The lighting is key in this image because your eye goes exactly where I want it to go and doesn't really wander throughout the rest of the image. Here's another image where we've taken an image that has a rather busy background and the eye sort of goes all over the place. Knowing that your eye goes to the brightest part of a dark image, I took advantage of blocking the light off of the background to create a darker background so that your eye goes more to the subject's face. In this image of the director, I used a snoot out behind the seats to light the director and give us a little bit of space between him and the stage. I chose to light the stage because that's the environment in which this director works in, sitting from the back, watching the action go on the stage. I thought it was a fun perspective to capture a unique portrait. In this image, I simply used one of my umbrellas as part of the composition. I thought it made an interesting background, a stark background really, with the black and white against the really stark patterns in her dress, which also feature values of black and white. So I just incorporated it into the shot. The sharp angles of the umbrella matched the sharp angles in the design, and I felt like the blue added just a nice contrast to the warm tonal values of her skin. So again, utilizing light to become part of your composition is a great compositional tool. Number 2 says, knowledge of the use of gels, grids, or cookies to alter the relationship among subjects or products. In this case, the use of the gel to change the color of the light added an interesting depth to this portrait. I loved having the purple sweater against a purple background, as it really ties the subject into the tonal values of that background. Now this is a black background with a purple gel on the light, and depending on how high or how strong you set that light, you can control the varying degrees of shades of purple that appear on that background. In this case, I added a cookie to create a pattern onto the background just to create additional interest and depth. I kind of liked the stripes of her shirt with the pink or purple and whites, and I echoed that pattern to some degree as best I could by adding a cookie and projecting it through a purple gel onto the background. The results give you just a nice, interesting change of pace to just your solid or gradient style backgrounds. Now, it may be hard to believe, but in this image, this is done with a mirror on top of a white seamless paper that is rolled up through the background. Yes, that background is white. But what I've done here is used a flag to darken the background. It's placed in just such a way that the light skims across the front of the flag onto the subject, but none of that light is able to reach to the background. Well, that's it for lighting. On to composition and design.